February 24th, 1968, the birth date of Mitchell Lee Hedberg. So weird for me. In my mind's eye, Mitch Hedberg is younger than I am. I was born in 69. Even when I met him at Sirius, I always thought of him as a little younger. So it's just weird to me that he's a year older. But I did want to give a shout out to Mitch on his birthday. I am a big fan. Over the weekend, I did a special episode that was Saturday's Daily Comedy News, all about Mitch Hedberg. So check that out if you did not. From Chortle, they're making an Australian remake of The Office, this time with a female lead. All right. The new version will stream on Amazon Prime. It's not weird that they remake The Office. There are versions of The Office in the United States, being an example of a remake of The Office. Also Canada. Wait, there's Canadian The Office? Why isn't that streaming in the States? Hold on, Google. La Job is a Quebec comedy TV series set in Montreal. It's an adaptation of The Office. National industry leader Jennings Paper, a multinational carton and packaging company, is restructuring. The regional manager of their branch is David Gervais. I like what you did there. All right, familiar beats here. David Gervais is a failed comedian and rocker who also fails to grasp the notion of political correctness. He tends to either make a fool of himself in front of the office crew or make it intensely uncomfortable. Sounds familiar. I'm on Wikipedia here. Seems like there's only 2 episodes? Okay, let's look at the cast. Regional manager David Gervais, sales representative Louis Tremblay. I can see him making a face for the camera right now. And, of course, the lovely receptionist, who I'm assuming Louis has a crush on. The assistant to the regional manager is Sam. Office temp is Fred. Warehouse employee and receptionist fiancé is named Luke. And the corporate head is Emmanuel. So it sounds like beat for beat, the British Office combined down into 2 episodes. All right, that was fun. Who knew? At one point, Jim Jeffries was linked to the Australian reboot, but that seems to not be in the cards. All right, looking forward to that. The AV Club caught up with David Cross, and they were like, hey, David Cross, do you find your audience expects you to tackle certain things? Cross said, for sure. The whole thing's evolving. It grows as my audience ages with me. Then younger people are made aware of me and want to check my stuff out. But I learned probably 3 specials ago, there's a faction of people who are like, stop talking about religion and politics. And then some people who are like, you should talk more about religion and politics. And then most of the people, 75%, are just copacetic with the set. They kind of come knowing I'm going to do a little bit of this, a little of that, and that's how it seems. One thing I've said throughout my career, and I was just talking to somebody about this who said something like, you're a political comedian. I've been saying this for a long time. I'm not a political comic. I'm a comic who talks about politics. And I think sometimes because of the tone and the kind of harshness of what I do, it's not easy stuff outside of crapping in Trump's mouth. That was easy. But outside of that, my theory is it feels a little longer. They were like, I saw you and you did 1 hour and 20 and an hour was political. And I'm like, no, I looked. When I'm sequencing the stuff and when I'm editing and put it together, I try for a third, a third, and a third. A third political, religious, all lumped in that same category. A third anecdotal stuff. And a third silly, goofy, stupid crap. And that's my recipe. I've been following it a long time. But I know for a lot of people, even though it's just a third set, they're like, you get up there and you talk about politics. I always find it interesting to read how a comedian builds their set. I remember sitting with Jerry Hamza, was George Carlin's business partner. And Jerry explained to me how Carlin would structure one of his shows. And if you think about it, Carlin would open with a bunch of rat-a-tat-tat jokes like, hey, you ever notice the people who, a bunch of those real quick, and then would go into a long set where he would tell a story. And Jerry explained, you know, if you keep doing that rat-a-tat-tat stuff, the audience fatigues. You need to let the show breathe and change speeds, much like you do at a music concert. Thought that was insightful. So this is David Cross doing a third, a third, a third. The AV Club. You talked last time, David Cross, about changing the dynamics when you're in Union Hall versus a 2,500-seat theater. Cross said, well, adjusting, that's purely on size. It's not about audience. When you're doing a big theater, you have control over how much light is in the audience, and I really like to limit the light past the first 5 rows. I really like to drop into not pitch black, but where I'm not making out any detail. Some people like more light, some people like no light. But in the smaller venues, I could see everybody and they can see me seeing them, and I love it. I enjoy doing theaters, but it's a much different show. I'm different. The audience is different. The give and take is different. The energy is different. A theater is more lucrative, and it's better for your ego. Not that they're bad shows. They're just slightly different. There's more performance to it, and there's some little things you subconsciously change just by doing it for decades and decades. You adjust without really thinking too much about it. Just your performance changes. So in that way, it's different. It's not so much about my audience, who I think is going to be crammed into a basement and who might be in row H in a theater, you know? Dave Chappelle opened a pop-up store in the village of Yellow Springs. It opened in mid-December, sees the most foot traffic on weekends, says WDTN. Heather Stewart is Dave Chappelle's production coordinator and says of the store, it's been amazing. We've been really busy. It works really well bringing business back and forth between the two businesses, but it's an amazing location. We have merch from both summer camps, so when John Mayer came and Bob Saget, we still have merch left over from that show. People were coming and buying up. We have a local designer. We use a local screen printer. Our staff is all local. Everything we do here is local to the village or the surrounding area. This is Dave's room when he comes to visit the store. This is where he hangs out. Dave gets a lot of fan art and a lot of stuff from his fans, and we really wanted to incorporate that with this space. So everything you see in the store has been gifted to us on the arena tour by local people. The place has become a bit of a popular hangout in Yellow Springs. Not only are you coming to possibly see a sighting of Dave in the shop, you're getting an experience. We have a local DJ that comes every night. So people just come in and hang out. The store's open Monday to Friday, 4 to 9, weekends 12 to 8. Today's Daily Comedy News is brought to you by the podcast Travel is Back. That's my very, very casual podcast where I talk about places I've been and what I like to do when I'm there. Right now, I'm sharing with you my trip to Paris from 2 years ago. This week's episode that just dropped today is part 2 of that series. Last week, I told you about hanging out in the Latin Quarter. Today's episode is about the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre. Next week is about Versailles. Then I'm going to tell you about Barcelona, then San Sebastian, Spain. So a lot of European stuff in season 2 of Travel is Back. In season 1, last summer's episodes, I did a lot of cities in the United States that I really like. Chicago and Nashville come to mind. So check out Travel is Back wherever you get your podcasts. Are you and I doing this wrong? Should we move to Austin and become comedians? Everybody seems to be doing well down there. The ExpressNews.com says Tom Segura and wife Christina Pazitsky have paid close to $6.5 million for a 5-bedroom, 6,230 square foot prairie-style mansion on almost 1 acre in a gated community on Lake Austin in Austin. They're just down the street from Joe Rogan, who has a 10,980 square foot mansion he bought in 2020 for $14.4 million. Wow. From the MMA News, your home for MMA News, what you think I was going to say? UFC women's bantamweight champion Julianna Peña hopes to try stand-up comedy. She was on the Joe Rogan Experience. She revealed she'd recently been approached about an opportunity to do a comedy set. Peña said, comedian Adam Hunter just texted the other day and asked me if I'd be willing to do a 5 or 7 minute set. When I was growing up, the 3 things I wanted to be, rapper, boxer, and comedian. Like I remember growing up being like, I want to be either of these 3 things. And so I love comedy. I'm a massive comedy fan. I told him, I think I will. Lucy and Desi are having a bit of a resurgence, says the Laugh Button. Amy Poehler has directed a new documentary called Lucy and Desi. In case you didn't get enough, Lucy and Desi on Amazon in December with that wonderful Being the Ricardos film. This is a documentary. Lucy and Desi hits Amazon Prime March 4th. And from The Independent, comedian Tommy Tiernan says he doesn't believe comedians should be hounded out of the job for making a mistake on stage. He was on the Free Speech Nation podcast. He said, if somebody gets up on stage and tells a joke, and on further reflection that joke's actually coming from not such a good place, then just stop telling it, move on. You don't need to be hung, drawn, and quartered in the virtual town square. It could be about race, it could be about gender, it could be about the Olympics, or Putin, or donuts, or lesbians, or mermaids. If it's funny, it's funny. That's your comedy news for today. Let's see if we could sell out those National Donuts chain t-shirts. Running out of time. Hope we can get them printed up. Got to get to 30. Go to buymeacoffee.com/daily comedy news. You'll find a picture of the t-shirt there, or go to tinyurl.com/donuts-chain. National Donuts Chain t-shirts, $20 plus shipping. I get $5 of that. Follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, wherever you get your shows. See you tomorrow.